Yep, and now the president has just sent out a tweet in the last minute. He wrote the first tweet, "My first order as president was to renovate and modernize our nuclear arsenal. It is now far stronger and more powerful than ever before. Hopefully, we will never have to use this power, but there will never be a time that we are not the most powerful nation in the world." All right, so what's he saying there?
He's saying don't test America and don't test Donald J. Trump. We are not just a superpower. We were a superpower. We are now a hyperpower. Nobody in the world, especially not North Korea, comes close to challenging our military capabilities, whether they're conventional, whether they're nuclear, or whether they're special forces. So the message is very clear. Don't test this White House, Pyongyang.
Dr. Gorka, watch. We're going to put up a full screen. I don't know if you can see it, but I'll read it to you. It shows the amount of time it would take for a nuclear weapon to make it here to the United States.
I bet he has memorized this.
To hit New York, 38 to 39 minutes. To hit Chicago, 37 to 38 minutes. Los Angeles, 33 to 34. And Hawaii, only 20 minutes. Should we be concerned about this?
Look, we're not taking the actions that we've taken, especially at the United Nations Security Council, which was a historic vote this weekend. We're not taking them because there isn't a threat. We're taking them because North Korea represents a grave threat. To quote Secretary Tillerson, General McMaster, the President, Secretary Mattis, a grave threat. Right. Not only to the region, but to the United States. Nevertheless, you look at the phrase from the Cold War, the correlation of forces. We are a hyperpower. North Korea is a very, very insignificant threat in terms of scale. They have this capability that they are using to blackmail the West, but you never give in to dictators and you never give in to blackmail. Right. And that's why North Korea has to de-escalate right now.
So I want to hear, China is calling on all parties to avoid any words or actions that might escalate the situation or make even greater efforts to resolve the issue via talks, kind of referring to the president's tone of fire and fury. So China is critical of the president. What's your reaction to China saying ratchet it down?
No, the ball is in North Korea's court. So China understands the problem. Think about the fact that China is a permanent member of the UN National Security Council.
But they don't seem to understand the problem. They say the president should ratchet it down.
No, look, everybody knows the ball is in Pyongyang's court. They can send a very simple signal, a signal that costs them nothing. They stop the rhetoric and they stop the missile testing. If they do that, they signal to the world that, okay, we get it, we've lost all our friends, we've painted ourselves into a corner, and we're not going to escalate anymore. That's all they need to do. Rex Tillerson was clear. Stop the testing. Stand down the rhetoric, and we'll understand that you understand.
Sure. The key, though, Dr. Gorka, is whether or not in North Korea we are dealing with somebody who is sane and rational. Are we?
Look, I think if you look at the last 30 years of activity from North Korea under this leader or his father or grandfather, it's a pattern. No matter how strange and hyperbolic their rhetorical flourishes are, their saber rattling with words, at the end of the day, all they're doing is trying to extort things out of the West. This was facilitated under the White House of Bill Clinton. The Obama White House made it even worse. You know, this is extortion, nothing less.
So you're saying, Dr. Gorka, are you saying they have built an atomic bomb to shake us down for stuff?
Look, it's absolutely clear. It's absolutely clear. This is a regime, because it is so Stalinist and because it cannot provide for its own people, it has to extort concessions from the West. Their people are starving. Think about that. Starving. This is the last hardcore. There's Cuba as well. There's China. This is the last hardcore Stalinist regime out there. As such, their lifeline is China and extorting concessions from the West. But it has to end now.
Right. Fire and fury was the president's rhetoric yesterday, and I think he's just about fed up. But it seemed as though he was almost reading it as if it was prepared, and we know it's an alliteration. Was that something that Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Dunford and Secretary Mattis signed off on or talked to the president about before he took that tone?
Brian, we don't give away the internal mechanisms here. But let's just look at the last 6 months, what we've done in Afghanistan, what we've done in Iraq, the cruise missile strikes in Syria. The actions speak just as loudly as the words of the president. But how we get great talking points from the team. Believe it or not, I've got great talking points for this interview, but the fact is, who approves them and who says yes or no, we'll keep that as inside baseball.
I've got a feeling hyperpower was on the talking points for today, because from superpower to hyperpower, that's something new, right?
Maybe. But you can use it. You can use it.
It's good.
Dr. Gorka, you were talking about the leader. It was just fascinating to hear you talking about Kim Jong-un and his father and his grandfather. How do you take a leader like this out? How do they continue to stay in power for so long without the people getting fed up if they are starving and he's starving his people?
Look, we have to be clear here, whether it's, any other nation of this kind where it has an illegitimate regime, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's North Korea, we want to be friends with the people of these nations. We're not against North Koreans. We're not against Venezuelans. It's the regimes that are the problem, illegitimate dictatorial regimes that don't allow dissent, that don't allow freedom of expression, liberty, First Amendment rights. That's the issue. What we do with those regimes right now, we just want the escalation to end. The irony, the great paradox is North Korea states that the actions it is taking are for its own national security. Every one of the actions it has recently taken undermine their national security. They have to understand, when they ratchet it up, that doesn't make things better for them, it makes it worse. For them, the regime, and also their people. For the interests of the North Korean people, we wish to see the regime ratchet back. Because it's good for everybody.
Right, although they don't see it because most of them don't even have electricity.
True.
Chuck Schumer came out after the president said fire and fury and said the reckless rhetoric is not a strategy to keep America safe. Dianne Feinstein, President Trump is not helping the situation with the bombastic comments. And this from a Republican with the chairman of the Armed Services in the Senate, the kind of rhetoric, I'm not sure how it helps.
That was John McCain.
That is John McCain. You're shaking your head. What's your reaction to American lawmakers turning against the president's words?
Look, Brian, whether it's the sevenfold increase in leaks out of this administration in comparison to Obama or Bush, or whether it's these kinds of statements, it saddens me. These are the moments when we have to come together as a nation and support the executive. Whether you voted for him or not, whether they're a Democrat, whether they're a Republican, these are the trying times. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, we stood behind JFK. This is analogous to the Cuban Missile Crisis. We need to come together. And anybody, whether they're a member of Congress, whether they're a journalist, if you think that your party politics, your ideology trumps the national security of America, that's an indictment of you. And you need to look in the mirror and ask yourself, what's more important, my political party or America? There's only one correct answer to that.
Indeed. All right, Dr. Sebastian Gorka there on the north line of the White House, where, as we could hear, they're moving stuff around because it's a restoration and renovation.
Beep, 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 beep.
Thank you, Dr. Gorka.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dr. Gorka.
All right, 13 minutes after the hour, Senator Mitch McConnell, he's the majority leader, complaining President Trump's expectations are just too high. Is that really the reason Republicans can't get anything done in Congress? It's the president's expectations that are the problem?
And you want to watch Fox and Friends while you're working out? Not at that gym, because it causes too much drama.
Nope.
All right, welcome back. So many people have been disappointed that the U.S. Senate was not able to do something about Obamacare, and right now it's teetering on the verge of imploding. Well, yesterday, the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, made it very clear, hey, don't blame us. The president's he's not realistic about how Washington works. Watch this. Here's from Florence, Kentucky at the Rotary Club.
Part of the reason I think that the storyline is that we haven't done much is because, in part, the president and others have set these early timelines about things need to be done by a certain point. Our new president had, of course, not been in this line of work before, and I think had excessive expectations about how quickly things happen in the democratic process.
How about nothing has happened? They've passed almost nothing of substance, and he also knows better than anybody else that if you don't get it done months before the midterm election, then nothing gets done. You had some time to get ready should the president win. Certainly you had time as the majority in the Senate, and they're not ready. They weren't even ready to push the president's nominees forward and fast.
Well, instead of complaining, instead of taking a recess and a break, then fine, go back to the Senate, work it out, get it done for the American people.
Why is he in Kentucky?
Exactly. If you need more time, whatever time you need, get it done. But don't complain about it. Don't have the victim mentality.
Well, what's interesting is he's complaining that the president doesn't realize how long stuff takes in Washington. We're not in the Senate working by the old rules, the old-fashioned way, where you have regular order, where you have committee hearing meetings and you figure things out, and then you have debate on the floor and amendments and stuff like that. We're not doing that in the Senate anymore. What they do now is they write bills in secret, they airdrop them in on the floor, and then they're rammed through on party line votes. You know, he's complaining we don't have time. The way they do it, he's got plenty of time to do that.
Well, then maybe we need to change the system. Maybe this is what the president's talking about, draining the swamp. Maybe the long, lengthy parliamentary whatever procedure or system they have that takes forever. Here we are like halfway through the year, and repeal and replace hasn't happened, tax reform hasn't happened, and now we're all losing confidence that it's ever going to happen at all.
They have to raise the debt ceiling, pass a budget, then do tax reform, all for the calendar year.
Yeah,
and he's speaking in front of the Rotary Club back home.
Exactly, taking a recess.
After he promised to stay through August, or at least to the middle of August.
It's a vacation.
Unbelievable. That's not realistic. It's not realistic because you stop working.
True. You can't get things done if you're not in the Senate.
It's unbelievable.
Unbelievable. He said the president has not been in this line of work before. I think people like that.
Did he forget that he might have been reported?
He gets things done ahead of deadline. That's the problem.
Oh, well. So anyway, that's
How do you feel about it? We clearly have some strong opinions.
Yeah, no kidding.
What an embarrassment.
All right. Meanwhile, President Trump predicted North Korea would one day have nuclear weapons. That was back in 1999. And now we know he was so right, it's scary.
Tim Russert, and a Democratic candidate for Congress being shunned by his own party because they found out he was pro-life. So much for being inclusive.
Good Wednesday morning, back with some quick headlines. An accused cop killer is finally behind bars after an intense 2 days of round-the-clock searching. Ian McCarthy captured walking along a Missouri highway, not far from where Officer Gary Michael was murdered in cold blood. Police say McCarthy fired his gun moments after Michael pulled him over for a traffic stop. The officer returning fire moments before taking his final breath. Officer Michael was a rookie cop and an Army veteran. He leaves behind a wife, 3 kids, and a grandchild. Tiger Woods set to plead not guilty to DUI charges today. The golf superstar, who won't appear at his Florida arraignment hearing, was arrested back in May. Police found Woods asleep behind the wheel, but he claims he had a reaction to prescription medication. Woods appeared to struggle during a sobriety test and also took multiple breathalyzer tests. Police reports show he had no alcohol in his blood at the time of his arrest. And whatever disgraced Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl said in captivity will not be heard in court. That's the decision by an Army judge ahead of Bergdahl's October court-martial. The judge also ruling 2 people that were hurt searching for Bergdahl will be allowed to testify. Bergdahl is charged with desertion and faces life in prison. He was captured by the Taliban in 2009 and freed as part of a controversial prisoner swap in 2014. That's a look at your headlines. Send it to you, Ainsley.
Good deal. Thank you. The Democratic Party is anxious to pick up seats in Congress, and they're rethinking their strategy by supporting pro-life Democratic candidates. The chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee saying this, quote, "There is not a litmus test for Democratic candidates. As we look at candidates across the country, you need to make sure you have candidates that fit the district, that can win these districts across America." The hot-button issue is coming to the forefront in Arkansas's most populous 2nd district with a pro-life Democratic candidate who is also a farmer and a teacher and on the ballot for the very first time. Joining us now is that Democratic congressional candidate, Paul Spencer. Thanks for being with us, Paul.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So I'm curious, why are you, if you're pro-life, why are you a Democrat?
Well, my stance on pro-life issues extends vastly more than just espousing that somebody be born. I think that life is sacred from the moment of conception, but I also think that same life that dignity of that life needs to be upheld through all stages of that life. So, I believe that this life is sacred. Once the child's born, I believe that we have a responsibility to support the mother. A lot of times you have crisis pregnancies, and a lot of times there just aren't the social safety nets in place to help entice a person experiencing a crisis pregnancy to bring that child to term. So I believe that we need to support life through all of its stages.
Okay,
and I think that the Democratic Party is very good about, at least has a track record of being very good about espousing those types of programs.
Even though they support Planned Parenthood and want to fund Planned Parenthood, how do you feel about that?
Well, I think that you have established case law now, and a lot of people look at an institution like Planned Parenthood, but we see in instances like Texas where access to Planned Parenthood has been reduced, that the abortion rate has gone up and maternal deaths have gone up. So whereas I am a pro-life candidate, and I believe deeply in pro-life issues, I also have to look at this in a somewhat more pragmatic way. And my personal opinion on Planned Parenthood is I would be hesitant about defunding it at this time. I think that until you have a Medicare for All type of a program that can provide assistance to the child and the mothers and other types of screenings for breast cancer and so forth, it's folly to just use the kind of a giant eraser and erase all these social safety net programs. And it is a very controversial program.
It absolutely is.
I'll give you that.
There have been a lot of groups that are pro-choice that have come out saying that they don't think that if you are pro-life, you should be a Democrat. They don't want you to run. I'm sure you've heard about some of these comments that have been made from different organizations and from different celebrities. What's your reaction to that?
Well, here in Arkansas, we're kind of a different kind of a political animal down here. We tend to think for ourselves in a lot of ways. And the party down here and its chairman, Michael John Gray, has made it very, very clear that this is an open tent party here in Arkansas. And I've been very pleased with the reception that I've gotten. That's not to say that there have been individuals, that have not said things about my candidacy, and I'm sure there will be more that do that. But I've not seen any kind of organized pushback against my candidacy per se. Particularly, again, I want to say that the party here has been very welcoming to me.
All right, Paul Spencer, we wish you all the best. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. The Trump administration working to unlock peaceful talks with North Korea, and our next guest says China is the key. Former CIA analyst Fred Fleitz with an insider look at that scenario coming up next.
America, and don't test Donald J. Trump. We are not just a superpower. We were a superpower. We are now a hyperpower. Nobody in the world, especially not North Korea, comes close to challenging our military capability.